In 2018, I was working as a bartender and sharing a house with a friend in Sandpoint, Idaho. I used to get off work pretty late, and I was kind of a night owl back then. It was always completely dark when I'd get home, so my after-work routine was usually a quick shower, then some downtime in front of the TV, either watching something or gaming, then I'd go to bed. During the week leading up to this, I had been seeing something behind our house almost every night when I'd go out for a cigarette before bed. I would always go out back to smoke, and we had a small back deck where our view was a big area of open land with nothing on it. Then past the open land, there was a little hill covered in trees that had a few scattered houses around the bottom of it. Everything past the hill was just forest. That week, I kept seeing this really skinny single beam of light that looked like it was shooting up from the ground and into the sky. The first night I saw it, I thought it was someone out in the woods messing with a high-powered light, but right away that was weird because it would be in different locations. It was also completely still when it was on, so it didn't seem like a light someone would be holding with their hands. It would turn on, stay perfectly vertical for maybe 10 seconds, then shut off. Then it would happen again a few minutes later, but from a different spot. It just wasn't a normal thing to see, especially out where we lived. After watching this for 3 nights in a row, I decided to try and get a picture of it with my phone. When it happened again, I had my phone ready and I was able to catch a few photos of it. They're not the greatest pictures, but I've sent them along with my story so you can see what I was seeing. The photos don't really do it justice though. It's hard to tell how intense and how high up the beam was going, but in person it was very noticeable. Anyway, about a week after I was seeing these lights, I got off work early, which for me was still kind of late. After I got home, I jumped in the shower, played a game on my Xbox for a couple of hours, then at around 2:30 in the morning, I went outside for a cigarette before bed. Almost as soon as I walked out, I heard noises in the open area behind our house. It sounded similar to an animal call, but not like any of the animals we would usually hear out there. It also sounded like it was moving across our property and over toward our neighbors, which was just to the right if you're looking out the back. I walked down our steps to see past the corner of our house, and there is a little dirt hill with a chicken wire fence on it that separates our place from the neighbors. Right on that hill, I could clearly see the silhouette of someone squatting down by the fence. The neighbors on that side had 2 younger boys, and it was a smaller silhouette, so I figured it had to be one of their kids, but it didn't make sense why they would be out so late, especially on a weeknight. Being more curious than I am smart, I started walking toward the fence. If it wasn't one of the neighbor kids, I wanted to know who was on our property. I've never been afraid of confrontation, and I was ready to call somebody out for being out there, but as I got closer to the fence, I started to get a weird feeling because I could see more detail and it just didn't feel right. When I got within about 50 feet of this person, I stopped and looked back at the house for only a split second, and when I did that, I heard them absolutely take off and book it toward the trees. It startled me so badly that out of sheer reflex, I yelled out, "Hey," as loud as I could. I could barely make out the shape because it was dark, but it was for sure, without a doubt, not an animal. This was someone on 2 legs and upright and absolutely sprinting away from me at full speed. It was also shocking to me how fast they were moving because it is open land, but it's all uneven ground and there are rocks and fallen trees and other random things all over the place, and they somehow avoided all of it. For lack of a better term, it actually looked superhuman. The whole thing was really intense, and my first reaction was to run back to the house, grab the shotgun we kept in the mudroom even though it was unloaded, and stand on the back deck holding it in plain sight with the porch light on. I did that for a good 10 minutes. I guess I was just hoping that whoever it was might look back and see me holding it and not want to come back. When I calmed down a little and went back inside, I woke up the guy I lived with just to let him know what happened and to tell him that someone had been on our property. It definitely put some anxiety in the house for a few weeks after that, but neither one of us ever saw anyone out there again. Also, after that night, I never saw another beam of light coming out of the trees either. It was all just a very strange experience that stopped as fast as it had started. I'm not saying what happened was something paranormal. I just think that the beams of light were weird enough on their own. Then when you combine that with catching some shadowy Olympic sprinter behind our house at the same time, there is just something not right about what happened. This isn't a typical UFO sighting or alien story like I'm sure you're used to getting, but it is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. It doesn't involve strange lights in the sky or abductions or anything like that, but I guess it's alien related, so I thought I would share it. I want to start by saying I have zero interest in aliens or Bigfoot or ghosts or really anything you can't see clear, undeniable evidence of. I don't like sci-fi movies or unsolved mystery shows, and all of that stuff is just simply not in my world, and that's why this was such a shock to me. This all happened in August 2021. I live in Sacramento, and at that time my work schedule was Monday through Friday, 2 o'clock to 10 p.m. One night after work I was exhausted for no reason, and I thought I was getting sick. So I walked straight into my house, went in my room, and passed out still wearing my work clothes. I barely remember my head hitting the pillow, but that night I had a nightmare, and I mean this was a nightmare. I've never had a dream like it before. I was lying flat on my back in the middle of my own backyard. I don't know why I was there or what I was doing, but I was just staring straight up into the sky at night. Out of the top of my view, one of those stereotypical gray aliens with the big black eyes walked up to me and stood directly over me, completely silent and just staring down. It leaned forward and kept putting one hand on the top of my head, and every time it touched me, my entire body would seize and lift up like I was being shocked by a defibrillator. It was a full body spasm, and I couldn't move or even speak. It would lift up its hand, then put it back down, and the same thing would happen. And even though it was a dream, it felt like every muscle in my body was locking up in real life. The last thing I remember was seeing it look right at me and watching its mouth move like it was saying something, but then I woke up. It was a horrible experience, and after I had woken up, I just stayed there in bed to calm down. I had to go to the bathroom pretty badly, but I just held it because I was too scared to even get out of my bed. The next day at work, I thought about it a lot. My entire body was sore, and I kept thinking that I either did have some flu or I had actually been tensing my muscles in my sleep during the nightmare. That night on my way home, I stopped at a Chevron by my house to get gas. I filled up, then went into the store to grab a bag of sunflower seeds for work. When I walked back out, there was a somewhat sketchy homeless guy sitting on the ground just outside the doors who was not there when I went in, and he was leaning up against the wall and digging through a backpack. As I walked past him, he of course asked if I had any spare change and followed that up with some story about needing it for gas. I could tell it was a complete lie, and not to sound callous, but I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for addicts and the homeless anymore. Living in California will do that to you, and I never give them money, but for whatever reason, I had paid for the sunflower seeds with a $5 bill, and I had $1 and something in change still in my hand, so I just handed it to him. He looked up at me and thanked me, then without missing a beat, he told me, "Don't ignore your dreams." I kind of froze there for a second, wondering if what he said were just the random mumblings of a crackhead, but it was so specific to what I'd been thinking about all day. I didn't know what to say, so I just said I won't, and then started walking toward my car. Then as I was walking away, he kept repeating it over and over again. He would say, "Don't ignore your dreams," and then I heard him say, "They're real, man, they're real." It was such a weird thing for him to say, and his tone even changed as he kept saying it, which made it sound less like a crazy guy and more like he was warning me, or almost like he knew something. I got in my car and tried to brush it off as a meaningless encounter with someone who was mentally ill and talking nonsense, but the further I got down the road, the more it started to mess with me. I couldn't understand why he would say that, like those exact words, and why he would say that to me literally the day after I'd had such a horrible and random nightmare. It got under my skin in a way I can't explain. I drove by that same gas station at the same time every single night for the rest of that week, and I looked for him each time. I've gone there for years and I have never seen him before that night, and I never saw him again after it. This probably doesn't sound like much, especially compared to other people's stories, but to me it was disturbing, and the timing of it felt too perfect to be random. The scariest part about the entire thing is something I haven't even mentioned yet. I have had the same exact dream 3 other times since this happened. One night back in 1998, my friend and his sister and I saw an honest-to-God, unexplainable object during a run on the Longdendale Trail near Glossop in Derbyshire, UK. I want to mention the location because I think it really matters. That area has a long history of strange phenomena and paranormal activity, and it's a very old part of England with stories going back centuries. We were all teenagers at the time, and it was already dark when we set off for our run, but the moon had been full and bright that night, and we thought a quick 30 to 45-minute run would be fun. After jogging for a mile or 2, we passed under a road bridge that crosses the trail. The trail itself is actually an old railway line, so originally the bridge went over the train. Just after the bridge, we stopped at a bench overlooking a big reservoir to take a break and enjoy what a nice night it was. While we were talking on the bench, my friend's sister noticed 2 red lights on the trail behind us in the direction we had just come from. It was hard to judge the distance, but they appeared to be shining through the open space under the bridge. We thought they were the taillights of a car on the hill behind the bridge, but there couldn't have been a car driving there. The more we looked at them, the more confusing it was. In the middle of trying to figure out what we were looking at, the 2 lights started rotating around each other. Seeing that shifted the mood, and we all got very serious. I think it was a mixture of fear and curiosity, but something changed. As the lights rotated faster, it became obvious that what we were looking at wasn't far away like we had thought. It was hovering above the trail right at the bridge, and probably only 3 to 4 meters off the ground based on the height of the bridge behind it. That was when we could plainly tell that what we were seeing was a single solid object that was slightly smaller than the width of the trail, which was built for 2 train tracks. As we were sitting there in awe of how unnatural it was, we barely spoke to each other and just stared at it. I was the one who broke the silence, and I asked my friend what we should do because the only way home was back under that bridge. The other direction led miles out into the moors and away from civilization. We were then startled by a loud pop and watched a 3rd white light that looked just like a burning flare drop out of the bottom and slowly come down about 1 meter. Then it changed direction and shot vertically into the sky, exactly like a flare would fly in kind of a wobbly line, but this just kept going until it was so high we couldn't see it any longer. All of our heads were looking straight up watching the flare disappear, and when we looked back down at the trail again, the main object was completely gone. The entire event lasted no more than 5 minutes, although as it was happening, it felt much longer. Once it was gone, we waited another minute or 2, then I got a nod from my friend which I knew was his way of saying let's go, and we sprinted back the way we had come. The worst part was going back under the bridge. There are tall embankments on either side that are both covered in thick bushes and shrubs. I remember being petrified that something was going to jump out as we passed through, and the fact that it was dark out didn't help. As soon as we cleared the bridge, we ran flat out all the way back to my house. When my mother opened the door, she instantly knew something was wrong. It was past 11 p.m., which meant we were nearly an hour later than we said we'd be, and all of our faces were white as sheets. We sat in the kitchen and told her everything. She listened to the whole story and didn't interrupt or dismiss our story even once. I feel like she could tell we weren't making it up. She's always believed in the paranormal, especially ghosts, so I don't think she had much trouble accepting that what we'd seen fell into that same category of unexplained and unnatural. In all my life, it's the only time anything like that has ever happened to me. Back then, I was far more afraid of haunted buildings and ghost stories. My Irish grandmother used to talk about seeing banshees, and that used to scare me horribly, but unidentified objects in the sky or beings from other worlds were never anything I thought about. Whatever it was, I'm glad it stayed at a distance, but it was very unsettling to see. We never ran on the Longdendale Trail again at night and would only do it in broad daylight. The one thought that still makes me shudder when I think about it is, if it was some kind of craft from somewhere else, who or what was inside of it?